Morning everybody, Dave from Area Arachnids. We're going to do March Madness number 4. This is going to be a tarantula spotlight video on the Neoholothele incei. This is the Trinidad olive or the Trinidad gold. There's two different color forms of this species, and they used to belong to the Holothele genus, and they were moved out of the Holothele genus into what they call the Neoholothele genus, which is neo, if you know, means new. So I believe neo means new, right? So why they moved them out, I don't know. I did not get into that last night. I looked up some other odds and ends stuff about Trinidad and Tobago, the two islands that are off the coast of Venezuela. Now these are from Trinidad, not from Tobago, but some different things about Trinidad is that it's a tropical island, very, very warm. So this species will thrive in higher temps. Low to mid 80s is an ideal temperature for these guys. They can be kept cooler because I do it here. I don't heat anybody up unless it's for breeding purposes or trying to possibly get somebody to molt a little bit quicker. Their general mean temperatures, their average low for the year is 68 degrees. I wish our average low here was 68 degrees. Actually, that would be a perfect temperature for me to live in, would be 68 degrees all the time. Anyway, and their average high is about 89 degrees. So, you know, of course, there's days that are warmer, there's days that are cooler, but those are their average highs and lows. So you can imagine the mean temperature in there is in the mid to high 70s. Even, you know, pushing that 79 degree mark is probably relatively close to an average temperature. So they like it warm, and it's a very humid place with their average rainfall is about 66.5 inches of rain per year, and no month that I looked at had more than, you know, on average 9 inches per year or per month. They have a dry season, if you want to call it dry season, between January and May. It still does rain, it just doesn't rain as often, and I think it's more of a, you know, sudden rain. So it's like, you know, the tropical out of the blue, you know, clouds, rain, sunshine, humid. That's what Trinidad is like. Other tarantulas from Trinidad is the Psalmopoeus cambridgei, or the Trinidad chevron. Also will tolerate warmer, more humid temperatures and more humid conditions. I don't generally do that with mine. They do get water dish refills weekly, and every time that I do water dish refills, I do overflow considerably. Not just a little bit, you know, but I'll let that area really saturate with water in that one corner. Sometimes they gravitate to it, sometimes they don't. Prolific webbers, they'll web up anything. You don't have to give them anchor points, but you can see in this enclosure here the things that were utilized for anchor points. There's some pieces of wood over on the side here and up in the front or bottom, right at your 6 o'clock. And then there's different plastic plants in there for her that I just pushed into the substrate and let her just do whatever it is that she wants to do. She made her own little cavern. She has never burrowed. I've had quite a few of these over the course of the last 3.5 years. I've had her for just over 3. They are generally very receptive to males when breeding, and you can cohab the male with the female generally for an extended period of time. I did it twice with her. She was bred. The male was with her for you know, a couple weeks. There were 1 or 2 pairings, and then when I started to see her a little bit more agitated with him, I took him out. About 4 or 5 weeks later, after the pairing, she molted. So the male was still viable, so I waited till she recovered. It was roughly 45 days. My male was still doing okay. Actually, it was probably one of the longest lived mature males that I've had. They were paired again, and she molted out a couple months after that, and at that point the male had died. So I never got babies, but I've had 2 communals so far. One was 7, one with 4. The one with 7, everybody died. There may have been 1 or 2 possible cannibalizations in that one, but most of them just didn't make it. You know, they're a very, very small, dainty, skinny species. So, you know, it's recommended as slings that you're using fruit flies or springtails or something of that nature to feed them, or pre-killed prey, cricket legs, cut up mealworm, stuff like that. They are very voracious. Once they start taking down live prey, they're rather good at it, and they are a chase down species. They will run around the enclosure chasing down their food. It's actually kind of a joy to watch. You just have to be careful with your enclosure types because the way that they web. I've had, not this one, one of the other mature male that I had when he was, before he matured, his webbing was all the way up to each side to the lid, and I put a cricket in there and he chased the cricket right out of the enclosure. He caught the cricket as he was going out of the enclosure, but he was on my table, and that's where he sat and was eating. So I put a cup over top of him and let him do his thing, and then when he was done, put him back in. But they are very, very quick. I'll show you 3 other enclosures, and we'll talk about the communals. The one that's in here is about 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches. I'm suspecting a female, but we'll know for sure in the next molt, because if it's a male, I would imagine that he would mature on this next molt. Again, just basic rudimentary setup. This one's got a little bit more dirt to dig in, even though he didn't do it or she didn't do it either. She just she made her web underneath here. The spider is right there, underneath the antler, and that's where it stays. This one here likes it a little bit damper, and will gravitate towards that area that I dampen if it gets to that point where it feels it needs it. And you can see it has escape route here, escape route there, and then escape route back here if it wants to. It only webbed over the area that it wanted to live in, so basically it made itself a tent. And it lined the bottom where they live. They line the bottom and they web over the dirt, and that's how they feel whatever they feel, and they are very good at running down prey. The last one that you saw is in pre-molt, and you can tell, you saw her abdomen was so long. Her abdomen was as long as her back legs, so she'll be molting soon. I don't think she'll get size, because that's about the size that they get. Females will top out around 2.5 inches, and males on average are around 1.75 to 2 inches is roughly what they will. I've had one that was 1.75, one that was 2.25, size-wise. And they're very easy to tell because they dull down, just like Salmopaeus do. They get real dull and they get real leggy, and it's unmistakable. You'll know as soon as you see your spider, the Neoholothele incei, if they mature into a male. It's absolutely obvious. There's no questions about it. So this one here, again, this one I keep more on a damp side because it seems to enjoy that a little bit more. The other one isn't so particular. And then I have the communal of 4, that's now down to 2. There is this guy here. Let's see if it won't, hopefully it won't want to take off on us. This one here was the biggest. Well, actually, I don't think it was actually the biggest. There was one bigger than this one that I don't know what happened to it. It wasn't in there. There was no way it could get out because the holes were too small for even the smallest one to get out. So I'm assuming that either it died and the other ones ate it, or one of the other 2 killed it and ate it. But that wasn't in there. There was one of the smaller ones that was dead, curled up in the side. I thought it was actually a molt, but I found 5 molts strewn throughout their webbing. This is my second attempt at a communal, and it hasn't worked out either time. So although people have had success with these, I think that that's the not the norm. It's more of the rarity that you actually get one to work. I think it's Tom Patterson that has had one either him or Chase, I can't remember, that are on 3 generations of a communal in these and have been doing fine. And I almost want to say that these ones would probably prosper with a little bit more space than like Monocentropas balfouri, because balfouris are used to being on top of each other. I think these guys need a little bit more room. So having 4 of them in the baseball cube may not have been my best bet. Maybe putting them in the softball cube, giving them a little bit more room, might have been a better option. But so they grow at a normal pace as far as I'm concerned. They don't grow super fast, but they can grow quickly if you feed them, more than what you should. They're easy to overfeed and get to molt, let's put it that way, especially if you keep them warm. Why there are 2 color forms was a question that somebody asked me before, and I don't have the answer for that, to be honest with you. I don't know if it's a locale thing. Maybe the gold ones are more coastal and the olive ones are more of the rainforest area. I'm not really quite sure. We'll see if this will focus for us. This is the smallest one that I have that was left in the communal. The one that was dead was smaller than this one. So again, they don't really need a lot. These are spiders you could put into a box of dirt, and they're either going to dig or they're just going to web the crap out of the place and make their own home. I've never owned the gold. There's no different care between them. Although I'd like to get a couple golds. I really do enjoy the olives a little bit more, just because of the contrast in the colors. The gold on the carapace with the black markings on there, and the bumblebee pattern on the abdomen. I think that, to me, aesthetically is a little bit nicer, but the gold is kind of cool looking. So that's really all there is to it. They're very, very small. Again, it's slings, so they're hard to get fed. They're definitely something small prey, like springtails and fruit flies. This size here, this little guy will be able to take down small crickets. Pinheads are even probably a little bit too small, but 1/4-inch crickets is probably an ideal size for this size spider right here. And they're very quick. Like I said before, they are very quick, and sometimes they're deceiving. You think that they're calm and collective and they're sitting there, and next thing you know, they're in Miami on the beach. So be careful and cautious using them, feeding them, cleaning them. Again, I try to do all my cage maintenance when I've fed. So if they have taken prey items, then I generally will nitpick through the enclosure, because I know that they're busy. And they'll generally grab prey and pull it into their little homes. For spiders like this size here in this enclosure, I would spray this enclosure down probably once every 5 days. Just give it a quick mist on one side so it has water to drink and a little bit dampness in the soil, and they'll do just perfectly fine. Again, if you have the ability to, and so this was a requested video from Cat's Tarantulas. Cat, if your snake enclosure has a heat mat or whatever your heat method is for your snake enclosure, these would be an ideal species to put on top of there, with like your Hapalopa species Columbia large is another one. They like that extra heat, and just make sure that if you do that, to give them that extra heat, that you're actually spraying or misting them a little bit more often, because the heat will generate that humidity and dry out the soil pretty quickly. Holes, ventilation, I tend to be a little bit less with the ventilation with these, if you can combat the condensation. I have a hard time here with the condensation, because it gets cooler, and a lot of my warmer species are up on higher shelves, and it seems like the heat gets up there with the cold, and then I get condensation on one end of the enclosure all the time. So to combat that, I generally have to add extra holes. But if you can keep the condensation down, I would use less holes for ventilation on these. So again, I hope this is what you need for your the care of your new little Trinidad gold. And Thanks for watching, everybody.